Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Tonight we're going to look at optionals, JPA entities, and Mapstruct. Last week we went through best practice for optionals, how to use optionals and how not to use optionals. In this video we are going to break some of the rules and then we're going to see what actually happens when we do so. So first of all, we learned last week that it was bad practice to actually have fields or member variables with the type optional. But I have a record right here. By the way, when you create a DTO, that means a data transferring object, the ones that you would return in your REST API, then use the type record. It's really good for that purpose. When you're creating your entities, then use a real class. Records are not supported, and a lot of times you actually want a flexibility that the class actually gives you. So whenever you have something, whenever you have a DTO for your REST API, good practice, use a record. Then you also know whenever you're in the code that you can see, where you can actually see, okay, there's a record. Okay, then you know this is actually used as a DTO. You can also postfix it as DTO, and you can postfix your entities with entity if you want to. I've not done this right here. I've chosen to leave out the entity, and then I'm just postfixing with DTO whenever it is a DTO. So I have a hero right here. So let us just look at this hero right here. So it has an ID, of course. The hero has a name. It has a power level, and then it has a perspective that can be good, evil, or in between. And then we have something right-hand equipped that's like what is the hero holding in the hand, and that could be like a fishing rod or like a sword or something like that, or a bag with gold or whatever. So this is my entity that I have right here. I have a DTO with exactly the same fields except for right-hand, which is an optional of string. I use Mapstruct, of course. I'm not going to waste time mapping between my entity and my DTO when all of the fields names are almost the same. Then there's no reason just have Mapstruct actually map it for you. And the way that I do that is with this hero mapper right here. I'm using the component model equal to Spring. That means that then I can inject this mapper right here in my other components or in my other services or in my other REST controllers. And then here we have the trick. So how do I then convert them when we have one type that is an optional and another type that is not? Then we can actually use a custom method to actually convert this and wrap and unwrap this into an optional. And the way that we do that is that we annotate our method. So this is the method that will convert an entity to a DTO. It's very, very simple. If you haven't seen my Mapstruct videos, please do so. Mapstruct is awesome. There's a lot of cool tips and tricks there that you can use. But if you want to do something that is not standard, like say that the source and the target name are not exactly the same, then you would add a mapping annotation. So a mapping annotation right here. Then you would say what is the source name, what is the target name, and in this situation, how should we convert it? How should we convert from the entity to the DTO? And in this situation right here, we use a method named wrap. I could have named this whatever. I could have named this Mike if I want to, but now the name is just wrap. It takes in a string because that is the value that we want to convert. And of course, you can reuse this method from multiple fields. You don't have to just have one field with this. And then you can. This is a default method. It's an interface that we are playing around with right here. So it's a default method that we are creating. You can have as many default methods that you want to on your interfaces. That was some of the newer stuff that we got with one of the later Java versions. So what do we do? We say optional of nullable value. So it's quite easy to both wrap the field and also to unwrap it. Right now we are not using the unwrap at all. It's just to show you how you would do that also. Of course, this is bad practice. You should not have an optional in your API. There's no need to do this. It's okay to return. It's okay to return an optional usually, but it's not. It's bad practice to take an optional into your API as an argument or as a parameter, because then you force the user of your API to actually also wrap their types into an optional. And it's also bad practice to wrap lists or maps. But watch the other video if you are in doubt why this is bad practice. The short answer is that the lists and maps are already containers, and optionals is actually also just a container that will help you out, and how it will actually make you readable code. That is the cool thing about the optionals. Okay, so now let us look at the REST controller right here, and let us see what actually happens. So we have two GET mappings. In the top, I have a REST controller. Then I have a request mapping that says hero. Required as constructor. This means that then I will get a constructor that matches all of the private final fields that I have in the top. That means that I have a construction injection with these repositories and mappers that I have right here. So then I don't have to, you should never write the outer wire. You should always use a constructor injection because it's easier to test that code. So use construction injection. Do not write outer wire except for in your tests. Of course, in your test you can do so. This is the request mapping /hero. That means that I have the endpoint that would match my DTO or my entity. It's actually just /hero /random or random DTO. And what it will do, it will actually give us one of the random hero with an ID less than 50. That's between 1 and 50. That's what we do right here. And I have a hero generator. That means that every time I start up my application, then this code right here is run. And the way that I do that is that I have a post construct annotation. This means that I have a component right here. Spring will then it will create this component right here. Then when it's done constructing the component, then it will run this code that we have right here. And here we have a list of open domain heroes. This means that these heroes have been used so long that they actually open domain. That means that I can actually create my own stories with all of these heroes if I felt like it. And I found this from on one website, and I just copied like 50 of these heroes right here. Now, if I'm bored one day, then I can take more of these heroes like Ivanhoe, King Kong, Zoro, etc. Then I can put them into my hero generator also. But I have enough hero right here to actually have something to play with. So yeah. So what do I do? I convert this. I create a stream with these, and then I say please map them into a hero entity, and I use the builder pattern right here. I create a name, power, and again the power is just the length of the name. When you create test data, you want the data to be the same every time you start up, or else you can have tests that sometimes works and sometimes does not work. So that means that you want to have the same value. That means that if I use the name of the hero, and then say that the length of the string is equal to the power, then I know that that's also always the data that I'll get. I will set ID to null because the database will provide that for me. Then I will give all of my heroes a fishing rod to begin with in the right hand. So I'm equipping that. And their perspective is then it depends on the name, and then we take the length of the name, and then we take the modulus value of the enum that is used right there. So that means that it will be the same value every time. But I don't know which value it is. Of course, I could calculate it myself if you want to. And then we save all of these into a repository. Of course, with your API repository, you can save one, or you can also save a lot at a time. Just for fun, then I'm taking all of them out of the database, and then I'm printing them out. Of course, I could have used the log statement right here, but I was a bit lazy, so I just wrote them out with the sysout. Let us try to start our application, and then let us see what actually happens. Our application started up. We are really happy. That's really good. Let us go to and take a random hero, port 8080. So this is random. This is an entity. If you look at this JSON right here, that is without the optional. Then because we're using Jackson. Oh, what happened there? There was an error there. No value. No value present there. ID -20. It should have been. Yeah. So when I take out a random hero, of course it should be a positive number. Of course it should be a positive number. So we will just take the absolute value right here. Math.apps. That was not good. That was not good. No. So let us just do that. That's fine. I'll just restart. We do not. We can't use negative IDs, of course. Or not, of course. You can use a negative IDs if you want to. It's just up. You can just set that instead. But right now the generator will start with IDs 1, and then it will continue from there. So now we have now we got a hero out here, and you can see the JSON format is exactly the same. Even though it's an optional, you will get the same JSON out because you're using JSON right here. But it is bad practice, so you should not do that. It actually hurts me a bit, but I'll still commit and push this code so you can actually see how to use the optionals there. Okay, so is there no way that we can use the optionals then with an entity, for instance? If you try to use an optional with an entity, then you will get a JPA error. And of course, I can show you which APA error it is that you will get. It will just say that it cannot convert it to the database types. That's actually because there's no handler for the optionals. Of course, you could write your own optional handler for JPA and say that that's how you want it to be handled. But there's no need for that. You should never do something like that. It's okay that the value is null when you put it in. The database can handle that with a null value into the database. When you take it out, if you want to, first of all, if I try to run this, then I'll get an error because. But I have to change another place also. I have to here where we generate the optional.auth. Remember, when it's a fixed value, you should not use of nullable, then you should use auth, because there's actually a trick. There's a check that is saved. When you go to auth, then it's just wrapping it into it's as an optional. If you say of nullable, then it actually, you can see what it does. Then the code is slightly different. There's a ternary expression right here instead that will return an empty if it's null. So it is slightly more efficient. It's not much, I know that. But if it's just good practice. If you have a fixed value, then you use of. If you have something where it actually can't be null, then you use of nullable. So it's all about readability, right? You want to make readable code so you and your colleagues can maintain it like in 6 months when you have to fix something or add a new feature to your system. Okay, so now we have optional there. Let's see what happens now when I press play. Then we should get a JPA error because JPA does not support per default. It is not supported by default optionals. So let us see right here what happened right here. Could not determine recommended JDBC type for, and then it mentions that optional that we just created right there. So that was the punishment that we got because we did not use best practice. Optional is not a type, it's a wrapper for a type. So it's a wrapper that will help you. It's a wrapper that will help you handle null, and it will make it more readable what you're doing. So if you really want to use it in an entity, then you can actually override the getter. So that means that if you want to make sure, if you want to show and to handle that sometimes the right-hand decrypt is null, because maybe someone will drop the fishing rod or whatever, and then they don't have anything in the right hand. So then you can actually override the getter method instead. So then you do something like this, getter, and then you'll say optional. This is totally okay. This is okay because now you're helping yourself and you're helping the code that you're writing. So that means that now you have your optional, right? So this means that of course now the wrapper fails because this is totally okay to do. So this is fine to do. Get hand equipped. But let us use another field because that one was already. Let's say that the name could be null instead. So get name and name, and actually we'll still have a problem. We will have a problem with Mapstruct when it tries to get that optional right there. So you have to, when you do that, then you also get some. You get a bit more. You can get some mapping problems. That's you just need to know about that. Every time you do something, every time you change your code, and if you want Mapstruct to generate its implementer, then you have to rebuild your code or compile the code again, and then let's see what happened now here. Yeah, so right now it complains about the name. It cannot. It says now that the name, when I try to get it out, then it's an optional instead, and of course that cannot be converted one-to-one to the DTO. Of course, a quick fix is also to add optional right here, but again, it's bad practice to use member variables or fields and to wrap them into optionals. So instead of doing this, then we will remove this getter right here, like this. Another thing you can actually do is you can apply default values. So let's say that you say of nullable or else. Actually, this is a better implementation. So else name unknown. So this is a better actually the way to do it. And then you would say this is still a string. You should still keep the type right here, or else you'll get a problem with the mapper. But now we are using the optional to actually handle the situation where it is null. And then if it's null, then we will return name unknown. And if it's not null, of course, then we will return the real value. This is a nice way to actually handle null. Now you can actually now you can be sure that none of your code will ever get a null name when it tries to use the getter. At least when you use the getter right there. So, and that is quite useful if you have a UI where you don't want to show null, but you can actually show something like name unknown, and then the user would know, okay, I forgot to type in the name. I will type in the name now and fix that the missing data right there. So it was just, yeah, so I hope this clarified to you, but how to use optionals and when not to use optionals. It is okay in your services to return optionals if it can help your code. So so if you have a service or a REST controller or some helper methods or some helper classes, then it's okay to return optionals, but it's not okay to take optionals in as arguments. That is bad practice. That means that you are too lazy yourself to actually call an optional wrapper like this. And then you force everybody else to always call optional blah blah blah, that field, the type, every time they have to use your method, and that's not good. It's okay that you protect yourself and your method for a null value. That's fine, but you should not enforce other people to use those optionals. It's just ugly, and you're just wasting people's time. So. But you can actually returning an optional is fine. So if the hero might be null, and now this is the API, so you would never return optionals here. But let's say that you actually had a service that actually did this work for you. So let's say that I actually had a service. So now we're creating a service for the controller. A service is actually just a helper component that would do all the dirty work. So then we do this, because then you have a clean API. So here, let's say that sometimes you actually have one-to-one. So that means that you have one method that then calls into one method in the service, and then the service will have access to the repository, while your REST controller will not have access to the mapper or the repository. So let's actually do that. So then we will just say private final hero service REST service hero. The name was a bit. This should just be hero service. Let us name it like that. Yes. Thank you very much. Yes. Rename. Thank you, IntelliJ, for all the help. And then we say here we can actually just say change this to be return hero service dot create hero, and then name like this. And here now, okay, let us just finish. So we say return hero service dot random hero, and here we will say, you can see now you get a much nicer REST controller class. This is much nicer, right? So now we can actually, if we can focus on here, okay, this is the endpoint, this is what we return, and this is what we get in. Yeah, so that now it's much nicer, and this of course this could be right now it's posted, but yeah, it could also be a path variable, of course, or request variable. But it could right now it's part of the. It could also be part of the body, and you write a request body right there. Yeah. So let's just do that. We forgot to do that, I guess, last time. So now you have to post the name as part of the in the body. Okay, so now here we actually have a random hero DTO. So let us see here now. It's okay that you know that sometimes this is not sometimes there's no hero, and then that you don't want to decide in your service maybe what should happen. That should be decided in your REST controller. If you want to organize your code like that, then it's totally okay to return an optional right here. So that can actually be, so here you would actually have a by ID, and then you could then convert, you can actually create, instead of to DTO, then you could actually say that you want to here in return of optional dot of nullable, and then you would return this one right here, and then you would not have or else row, then you would just map null actually. So here you would just have get, so that means that this could actually be null. So if you have a null, then you would return null there. That is totally okay, and then you wrap it afterwards as null. But it could be solved a bit nicer. But right now it's an optional that we return, and then that optional could then be used in the controller. But I don't want to do that, so I'll just want to keep it as I have it right there. But it's what I'm trying to say is that best practice optional is not to have them as arguments or parameters, not to have optionals as local member variables, not to have them in your API in general. And this is also very bad, right? This one right here. But you can actually reuse them as return values if you want to, and use them as wrappers to make your code more readable. That is why you want to use the optionals. And you can use it with Mapstruct, as you just saw. You just have to help Mapstruct a bit with the wrapping and unwrapping. That's the only thing. Yeah, and you cannot use optional with JPA member variables because it does not know how to convert it into database types. So I think that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching and have a great evening. I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.